This is an interview of a candidate for Bandon School Board conducted by the League of Women Voters of Coos County. All candidates were invited to participate. We will begin with Claudia Powers. Claudia Powers is running for Bandon School Board Position 3. A graduate of the Bandon Public School System, she is a retired energy and environmental attorney, a former teacher, and a curriculum designer for a national career education pilot project. Her opponent, Stan Avery, did not respond to the League's invitation to participate in the review process. Question number 1. Why are you running for school board?
First of all, thank you very much for conducting this interview. I really appreciate it. And I'm running for the school board because I believe in public education. I think it's not only the cornerstone of our democracy, but it's really the heart of little communities like Bandon. I think we're all concerned to have a strong and successful public education in our community. And we want to make sure that we've got room for everyone and that we have academic freedom here and that we can conduct our curriculum in the way that we see fit. We don't want to be threatened to have our federal money withdrawn for failing to meet mandates from outsiders. And so as a former teacher, I am really aware of the joys and the challenges of being in the classroom. As an innovator in public education, I am aware of the impact of creative solutions to difficult public education problems. And as an attorney, I have had to manage difficult situations with lots of folks, most of whom are adverse, to solve big problems. So, for example, on federal Superfund sites, we've had to deal with many different points of view and bring those solutions to a successful conclusion under the scrutiny of
30
public
seconds.
review. So I think I've got some skills to bring to the Bandon School Board.
Thank you. What relevant skills and experience would you bring to the school board?
Well, as I've mentioned, I have had a lot of experience in negotiating under difficult circumstances. For example, when we had to come to conclusions and resolution among groups of people, including unions and corporations and municipal authorities and regulators and enforcement personnel, to find ways forward with very complicated projects. We were able to do that. And although it takes time, I think learning to listen and learning to negotiate and learning to advocate are all skills that can be useful on the school board, particularly when it's facing, I think, funding and budgeting problems.
If elected, how much time would you invest in visiting the schools?
I think it's really critical for school board members to get to know the school system. And that's the whole system, from primary to elementary to secondary schools. And in Bandon, we have a terrific little school system, and we have some very good teachers in the system. And I think school board members should take time at least once a week to wander through the school systems of their choice, either middle school or elementary school or high school, to get to know the teachers and the students and the classrooms.
In your role as a liaison between the community and the superintendent, how will you solicit and weigh input from teachers, parents, non-teaching staff, and students?
I think that's a critical role for a school board member, because I think the policies that we have to develop and implement are only going to be really successful if we understand the problems that the communities you've just mentioned have. So I think it begins with listening. I think we have to do outreach to bring parents in particular, but teachers and students themselves into school board meetings or special school board events to listen to their impression of what's going right and what's not going right in our school system and what we might do about it from a policy position. I think that in particular, it's very important that we get our school system really involved with the community in making budgets. I think that's a process that we're all going to have to become more familiar with. It needs to be transparent. We need to get people involved to help make decisions about what happens if there's a significant revenue shortfall. What are the workarounds when that happens? What are the priorities from the community? And how do we make that work? So I think that the way that happens is good invitations for school board meetings, special school board events, depending upon the particular issue, like budget committees. And in communities like ours, where we don't
30
have a print
seconds.
newspaper, we're going to have to make a special effort to get the word out, to get people invited into meetings where we can conduct these kinds of discussions.
What are the most pressing challenges facing the district, and how would you address them?
I think the most challenging issue that's in front of the district is financing. We need to spend time thinking about how to stabilize funding for a small rural district like ours. We tend to be at the end of the chain of events and schools ahead of us, bigger schools, when it comes to funding allocation from the state school fund. So I think we need to make sure that we understand how that allocation is actually constructed and what we can do about getting a little bit bigger piece of the pie, because I think we're going to need it, particularly if we don't get federal funding. Right now, we get at least $1.1 million in federal funds to support our programs like school lunch programs, our additional help for elementary school math and reading. We get extra teachers, teachers aid. There's a lot that is funded by federal monies that come to the Bandon School District. If we don't have that same amount of money, or perhaps any at all, we're going to have to make some serious decisions about how we fund education in Bandon. So I think what we're going to have to do is look at it very seriously to figure out how we're going to stabilize funding for this little district in the short and the long term.
How would you prioritize limited funding in the current uncertain environment?
I think one of the first things that we have to do is to talk to our teachers, talk to our parents, and talk to our kids about their priorities. I think we need to be careful listeners. I think we have to have open minds, and I think we have to make decisions that are reasonable within the context of those budgetary limitations. So what I think we're probably going to have to do here is we're going to have to protect, I would say, the teaching staff, the quality of teaching staff that we have here. We're going to have to figure out how to protect and maintain that teaching staff. I think that we're going to have to look for creative alternatives in the community to support other activities that we may not be able to fund in the future that are important for our students. We're going to have to ask the community, I think, to step up and actually give us information about its priorities. I think part of what we can do in trying to find creative solutions to making sure that we maintain academic excellence and teaching excellence and graduation rates that are on time is that we're going to have to ask help from parents and from the community to get that done.
What steps do you think need to be taken to foster a safe environment conducive to learning in the schools?
One of the things I think is really important is for teachers and parents and the administration to agree on certain standards of respect that we all have to have for each other in a community like a school. I think there have to be reminders that kids have to pay attention to on a daily basis about courtesy and respect for other people and their spaces. I think that we need to be sure that the kind of disciplinary actions that we propose for certain kinds of rule infractions are fair and make sense, that are related to the kind of infraction that might, in fact, cause a problem or a safety issue in the community of students. And I also think we need to be very mindful of the mental health of our student body, that we need to have counselors available and teacher training available to know how to handle crises for our students. I think we've got some very good policies in the Bandon School District 54 for that, but we have to make sure that those policies and the training of people who are in our system are in fact occurring.
Bandon schools show only 45% of students meeting grade expectations in math. What should be done to improve this number?
Well, as a teacher of basic skills myself, I can't emphasize enough the importance of basic skill trainings for our students. And one of the things that we have available are Title I funds to support elementary math and reading programs in Ocean Crest Grade School. But I do think that in order to get after the difficulties that we're having in our school system for math and reading, we're going to have to look for sure at the primary and elementary grades first, because I think that we need to make sure that kids in those grades are getting what they need in order to step on to the next grade level. I think that we absolutely have to have ways also to measure our own success that may or may not include standardized testing. That's one form of testing. But I think there are other forms of tests to measure progress in teaching math and reading that are just as effective. So I think we need to take a careful look at that, be sure that we maintain our Title I programs and focus on the elementary school children in particular.
What rights do parents have under Oregon law to direct their children's education, and what role should parents plan in shaping school policy?
I think that, again, if you look at the students and handbook and in the publications from Bandon Public School 54, there's a very clear statement of what parents' rights are. And I think that the school board needs to be vigilant about respecting those rights and making sure that they are accommodated accordingly in the school system. And I think that, again, one thing that we need to do in the public school system is to make sure that we can reach out effectively to parents and listen to what their concerns are. Because if we don't know what their concerns are, then we may think we're solving problems that don't exist, or we miss the point completely. So between the actual handbook, which is available to any parent, and the system that we've got in place here, and we think we're doing a good job, I think we need to check out our success by actually talking to parents.
Recently, the federal government sent a Dear Colleague letter warning that it would pull funding from schools that have diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. How do you see this affecting the district? And what, if anything, would you change in school district policy in response?
Well, first of all, I think the Dear Colleague letter was a mistake. I don't think that the Dear Colleague letter or the mandate following it for certification for school districts in accordance with civil rights law was clear enough to be complied with if districts were in fact inclined to do that. There was no definition of what illegal DEI or diversity, equity, and inclusion programs might be. So I would think it would be very difficult to attempt to comply with something that has not been defined. With regard to what's happening in Bandon School District, we have a code that's titled ACB, and it's titled Every Student Belongs. And let me just read the first paragraph, which is all students are entitled to a high quality educational experience free from discrimination or harassment based on a perceived race, color, religion, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, or national origin. I think it's pretty hard to argue with that, and I think it certainly meets federal requirements.
What, if anything, should the school board or the city be doing to make it easier for teachers to live in Bandon?
Well, there's been a lot of discussion about how do we find reasonably priced housing for people in Bandon where their property values have now become unreachable for members of our population and working members. And it's not just teachers, it's other people in Bandon as well who need adequate housing or having a hard time finding a place to live. So I think what the school board's role in trying to find adequate housing for teachers is to work with community partners on that very issue and see if we can't come up with some creative solutions that will help us be able to provide not only adequate but good housing for our teachers and our staff here that support our school system. And I don't have the solution in my pocket. If I did, I would certainly propose it at this moment. But what I think it's going to require is a collaboration between the school board, the administration, and teachers, and this community to come up with some good solutions for housing for our teachers.
Thank you. Would you like to make a closing statement?
Thank you. Yes, I would. In closing, I would like to say that the educational foundation of my professional life really started right here in Bandon, grades 1 through 12. And I want to be on the school board to ensure that every student in this district has the same opportunity for a quality public education that I got. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome.
Back in here.
Thank you very much for joining us today. The League of Women Voters encourages all voters to check vote411.org to find more information about what's on their ballot. Thanks again.